Imagine walking into your favorite store and finding the shelves empty of U.S. snacks, whiskey, and wine. No more American flavors, no more top brands just gone overnight. Sounds unbelievable. It's happening right now. Canada and the United States are locked in a tense trade standoff, and the result is shocking. American food and alcohol won't be hitting Canadian shelves anytime soon. From your favorite bourbon to popular snacks, the impact is real, and it's only the beginning. This isn't just about groceries, it's about politics, power, and the price we all pay when trade wars heat up. So, what caused this sudden freeze, and what does it mean for you, the consumer? Let's break it down. When we talk about trade standoffs, most people immediately picture government officials in suits, sitting across long tables, debating tariffs and quotas. It feels distant, almost like a chess game played in a closed room, but here's the truth. It's not distant at all. It's in your kitchen, it's in your favorite restaurant, and yes, it's in the empty space on your grocery store shelves where your favorite U.S. products used to sit. When Canada and the United States fail to find common ground on trade, the ripple effect is immediate and deeply personal. What's happening right now is a textbook example of economic interdependence being put on trial. For decades, consumers on both sides of the border have lived in a reality where choice was abundant. You wanted American whiskey, it was there. You craved a particular brand of chips or a specific craft beer from the States. No problem. That illusion of endless availability has become part of our psychology. We expect it. And when expectation is broken, it doesn't just create inconvenience. It creates tension, frustration, and even a sense of loss. This disruption is not merely about goods. It's about habits and identities. Think about it. Our choices in food and drink are tied to our routines, our social lives, even our self-expression. Removing them overnight forces us to adapt. But adaptation always comes with resistance. That resistance often turns into blame. Blame on politicians, on foreign governments, on whoever we can hold accountable for breaking the flow of what we once considered normal. And that is where the deeper consequence lies, not in the empty shelf itself, but in the trust that erodes between nations and, by extension, between people. The shelves, in this case, become a silent stage for power struggles. They remind us that what we consume is never just about taste. It's about treaties, leverage, and economic sovereignty. It's about who gets to call the shots when two giants lock horns. And right now, that battle is playing out in the most tangible way possible, through absence. Missing S is the soul of a signal. Bourbon or box of snacks is a signal, a message that negotiations have failed to serve the everyday citizen. So what do we do with that knowledge? We can ignore it, complain about it, or use it as a wake-up call to understand just how connected we all are to these decisions. The products we take for granted are the byproducts of complex agreements, and when those agreements stall, so does our convenience. That's the uncomfortable truth. If nothing else, let this moment remind you of this simple reality. The global economy isn't somewhere out there, it's in your pantry. And when politics decides to play hardball, it's your dinner table that takes the hit. The second layer of this crisis is not abstract. It strikes at the core of daily life for both consumers and businesses. When a trade deal stalls, it's easy to assume the consequences exist in the realm of politics alone. But the truth is, those consequences seep into the fabric of ordinary existence, into every transaction, every expectation of normalcy. Canadian consumers are beginning to feel this pressure. Prices creep upward as supply becomes constrained, and selection narrows until choice, once a given, feels like a luxury. That slow erosion of abundance creates more than inconvenience. It stirs a sense of vulnerability. Think about what scarcity does to human behavior. Psychologists have long observed that when resources become limited, our minds shift from calm preference to anxious need. People don't just want the American bourbon or the familiar snack. They need it because they're told they can't have it. Scarcity breeds urgency. Urgency breeds frustration. And frustration, if left unchecked, transforms into resentment not just toward the shelves, but toward the systems that allowed them to become empty. Now consider businesses caught in this crossfire. Restaurants that built menus around imported U.S. products suddenly scramble to adapt, and adaptation comes at a cost, financial and emotional. For small businesses, these aren't abstract figures on a spreadsheet. These are hard choices about which dishes to remove, which drinks to drop, and which loyal customers they might disappoint. For larger chains, the stakes involve brand image, supply contracts, and investor confidence. Every disrupted supply line reverberates through a chain of dependencies, each link tied to someone's livelihood. And here lies the irony: the very businesses and consumers who have the least control over trade negotiations bear the heaviest burden of their failure. It is the ordinary individual, the diner, the bartender, the grocery clerk, who becomes collateral damage in a political stalemate. And this is where the philosophical weight of the issue comes into view. When global systems fail, it is the local reality that fractures first. Yet, there is a profound lesson hidden in this disruption. It forces us to confront the fragility of convenience. For decades, the global marketplace has conditioned us to believe in perpetual availability. The idea that any product from any country can appear at our doorstep without delay has become an unspoken promise. But that promise was never guaranteed. It was a carefully maintained illusion, and now we are watching the cracks appear. So the question is, what do we do with this awareness? Do we retreat into frustration, or do we use it as a call to rethink resilience personally, economically, and nationally? Because when we understand the cost of dependence, we begin to see the value of diversity, of supply chains, of trade partnerships, and of local innovation. And that's the deeper truth this moment whispers. What you cannot find on the shelf today is a reminder to build a future where stability does not depend on the fragile thread of a single deal. At the heart of this standoff lies something far more complex than missing bottles on shelves or rising prices at the checkout line. This is a reflection of political and economic tension, a contest not just of numbers, but of narratives. Every trade dispute carries with it a story about sovereignty, about fairness, about who gets to define the rules of engagement in a globalized world. And when Canada and the United States, two nations bound by geography and history, find themselves at odds, the conflict is never purely economic. It becomes symbolic. Trade is not simply an exchange of goods, it is an extension of power. Tariffs, quotas, and market access. They may sound technical, but they are tools of influence, levers of control. When one side imposes a restriction or resists a concession, it is sending a message: we will not yield. That posture may play well in political speeches, but it comes with consequences that extend beyond the negotiating table. Because every rigid stance, every delayed agreement, plants seeds of mistrust, and mistrust, once sown, is not easily uprooted. What we are witnessing now is not an isolated disagreement. It's part of a larger philosophical struggle about interdependence and autonomy. How much should a nation rely on another for its essential goods? How much control should it surrender for the sake of economic efficiency? These questions are not just technical. They strike at the core of national identity. For Canada, the question might be, do we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to U.S. leverage? For the United States, do we maintain dominance or accept a more balanced partnership? These are questions that shape policy, but they also shape perception, and perception shapes trust. The danger in such conflicts is that they rarely remain contained within the realm of trade. They spill into defense agreements, energy alliances, and diplomatic relations. One disagreement becomes a prism through which every future interaction is refracted. This is why these negotiations feel so weighty, because they are not only about access to food and alcohol. They are about the trajectory of two nations' relationship in an increasingly unstable world, and that is what makes this moment so critical. It is not just a pause in commerce, It is a test of diplomacy, a test of whether leaders can rise above short-term political gain to safeguard long-term stability. If they fail, the cost will not only be measured in economic terms, but in the erosion of a trust that took generations to build. So, here is the thought I leave you with. Every trade dispute is, at its core, a question of values. What matters more, dominance or cooperation? Because the shelves will eventually be restocked, but the scars of mistrust linger long after the goods return.